Okay, so I've actually had no power for several days. My power actually just came back on this morning, which is convenient because it allowed me to actually watch the direct, which then resulted in probably an announcement I don't think many people were expecting. They actually announced Splatoon 3. So for today's video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going over the footage that was released. I'm going to watch it, and we're going to give some thoughts on some of these things, and we'll just basically do an analysis of the direct reveal trailer. I had to pull up the actual direct itself because the standalone trailer isn't up yet. But yeah, so we're just going to watch it. We'll give some thoughts on some things, and at the end, I'll throw in some of my hopes for what the game will be like. So without further ado, let's actually just get right into it. So it seems like whatever's happened here has certainly happened probably far into the future after Splatoon 2. And then what we can see here is they're following a bit of the design cues of the Animal Crossing team, in that not having things not be tied to gender, which I thought was a cool design choice that the Animal Crossing team made to just stray away from being things focused on gender. And I think a lot of people will appreciate that. In fact, over the last couple of years, I've been using the female ink link, and I've always had people ask me, well, why? And it's mostly down to the fact that I've never cared for the male designs and the hairstyles, because even though I am a guy, I've never once had any of those sorts of hairstyles in my life. So I just never cared for any of them, but I preferred the female designs, so I've been using those the whole time. But this will be interesting, and this will be good for the people that liked that sort of change in Animal Crossing. And while I didn't use any of the stuff in Animal Crossing, this is definitely a good way to do it. And then we also get to see here the new weapon, which is actually this bow right here. This is one of the new weapons, probably like the key new weapon, kind of like how the dualies was for Splatoon 2. This is probably going to be the more important thing in the game, or one of the bigger additions to it. And then what we get to see here immediately is you also get to customize a salmonid, which is definitely is probably tying into the story in some way, shape, or form. It might have something to do with that Splatoon JP tweet where they had the hidden SOS in the thing. This is probably going to tie into that in some way, but it certainly seems like whatever's happening here definitely happened way after the events of Splatoon 2. So it'll be interesting to see if any characters from the first two games actually show up here. And then we have this sort of train throwback a bit to Octo expansion. I mean, I'm assuming that's sort of what it is. But, I mean, who knows? And here we get to see a look at the new plaza. And just by looking at it, it seems as if this is mostly just a city block in some giant town somewhere. Where in the other two games, it's been mostly like, it seems as if the plazas were just areas off the side. You know, like how a playground would be off to the side of it, like a area or whatever. This actually just seems like they're in the middle of a huge city, and we'll get a bit more of a shot of that later. But it definitely looks more like it gives off the vibe of being just a city block as opposed to like just an area off the off the side of some place. And here we can get a few more shots of what seems to be the actual city behind or in the middle, that this is all in the middle of. And we can see there, we'll back up a few frames here. We get a shot of what will be the actual main tower that you would go to actually play the game. And it looked like the player actually didn't even see this in their view, because we don't see it dead ahead of them. So maybe this area is actually pretty sizable, but we will have to see. And now this is where we'll pause a few more times here. So one of the big things immediately, they're spawning in the air. They aren't on the ground anymore, and now you can actually see the bow here as well. You get a look at the new E-Leader, the new Dynamo, and the new Blaster. And then it cuts the other team, and we had a look at the Sloshing Machine, the new Splatter Shot, the Hydra, and then what looks to be like a new version of the 96 Gal. When I was originally watching this, I thought it was the H3, but now that I'm looking at it a few more times, it actually is just a new version of the 96 Gal. And then we also get to see this. You no longer spawn, because you no longer spawn on the ground, now you have to land on the map. And it looks like you can choose anywhere, but I'm assuming you can't land anywhere on the map. There's these markers here might indicate something, or like some restricted area that you can land in. But if you can land anywhere on the map, that would definitely solve an issue of being spawn camped, because you can't really spawn camp someone if they can spawn anywhere. They can, like, move away from where the fight's happening and spawn somewhere safely, which would then also in turn make things like stealth jump go away. I mean, if they allowed you to spawn anywhere, then there wouldn't really be a need for stealth jump. I mean, granted, you could probably still do it for super jumps, but this would save an issue of being able to, land somewhere safe where the fight's not occurring, and get right back in that way. But we see them landing into the map here. And then here we actually get to see, this is actually a nice pause, we see how the bow actually shoots, and it shoots 3 shots. And by the looks of it, it doesn't paint very well. It's something that looks like it's mostly going to be used sort of like a charger would, where it just sits in the back and shoots shots from distance and killing people that way, rather than actually being the thing that would paint the map. That's my guess, just because from the looks of it, I mean, we only see a couple blobs coming off of this, so unless these actual shots themselves paint a bunch, it doesn't look like this thing's going to be a painter. This definitely looks like it's going to be a slayer. And then here we see some sort of like barrel roll in the sky that you can do as a squid. This is definitely, it seems as if it's some new mechanic or some new movement ability, but I mean, I don't know how useful it is. It'd definitely be useful in place of substrafing to like reposition or like change your where you're moving mid-air, or like stop in your tracks. But it'll definitely be interesting to see if this is actually something that is a mechanic to some weapon, or if it's just something that everyone can do. And here we get a look at the map, and it looks pretty bland, actually. It's pretty basic geometry, just some elevation changes. Aside from these grading here, it all looks pretty basic, and I hope that it actually gets changed. I mean, granted, in Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, when those were released, or the trailers were released, they had maps that didn't, weren't indicative of the final product. So maybe this one will actually get changed. And then it also looks like it takes place in that same desert that the intro does. And then here we get to see one of the new specials, which looks like it's a new version of the Ink Zuka. But as we'll see in a bit later, it actually only fires like a straight shot, like an actual rocket, rather than shooting like a tower of ink. And here we get some more shots with some of the weapons. We get a view of this little guy, which, if I had to guess, based off what it's doing here, my guess would be is that it moves to the left or right of you after you throw it and just lays down ink. So kind of like how a curling bomb in Seeker would, but instead of being in front of you doing that, it would just be to your left and to your right. If I had to guess, that's what it is, and then it would probably explode if it ran into a wall or it ran into somebody. But that's only my guess. It does have these guns in the front of it, which it could be using to lay down the ink, but we'll have to see. That's just my theory as to what it is. And then here we actually get to see this thing, and we get to see that it is only firing just a shot straight forward. So this will definitely be something that will probably take some aim to use, which is good. We definitely need more of that kind of stuff. And it's I'm actually interested to see how exactly this thing works. Because it definitely, I mean, the design of it looks very similar to the Inkzuka. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what it does and how this actually works. And if it's like pretty forgiving with its hitbox or not. And then, yes, it isn't coming out until 2022, which is still a bit of time from now, but I'm completely okay with that. I would like to see maybe a test fire this year. That'd be nice. And if I had to guess, I'd probably say it would probably come out in quarter 3 of next year, somewhere in like the summer or after summer, late summer. Just like how they've been with Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 releasing in the summer portion of the year. It would just make sense. So I kind of feel like that's where they would aim for. Then as for my hopes for the game, my biggest hopes would be that I don't want to see specials that make people invincible or affect time to kill. Those have been some of the two biggest gripes that me and a lot of other people have had with Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, were the specials that affected time to kill or affected survivability. It makes sense as a design standpoint, but it like that sort of stuff just gets so easily abused. I'd like to see that sort of stuff go away. As for like weapons and stuff, I'd like to see them stray away from, again, affecting time to kill. I mean, damage up and defense up were okay because they were, they could balance each other out. But main power up being damage up for some things it didn't work. I didn't think that was a good choice. So I'd like for them to go away from that. Hopefully they do. And I'm very interested to see what that bow is about. I'm interested to see what that rocket launcher is. Definitely interested to see what the crab is. I'm definitely interested in all of this. And I'm super excited to see what more will come out. And with it only being next year, we're probably going to start getting some more information as the weeks and months go by. And when that does happen, I'll for sure be making a video about it. So for those that are interested in this, tell me what you think of all this stuff. Do you think it is interesting? What are your hopes for the game? What are some of these things? What did you think about some of this stuff? Do you think that the crab is sort of like a sideways seeker like I thought? Or I just want to hear everyone's thoughts, basically, because this was something I don't think anyone really expected. So with all that, I think that's it. And so I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.